anticipated. It's still one of the more powerful combo decks in the format, but it feels like Storm, at least on the Open series, has taken Sneak and Show's role as the most popular combo deck.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely has been true. But Ross, some of a throwback here, I think was trying to catch the field unprepared by it and really did not expect this coming out of the Roanoke guys.
I think that if you knew 3 of your 15 competitors, a full 20% of the field, is going to be on Death and Taxes, Ross would have found a different deck to play.
Yeah, I mean, his Standby Elves actually has a fantastic Death and Taxes matchup. All right, we'll go underway. Todd will be on the play here as we start things out. So you mentioned the specific hate cards that Ross is going to be looking for in this matchup.
Well, early on in the game, cards like Thalia can be very disruptive. You see Phyrexian Revoker, that's a card that can answer sneak attack. You have Spirit of the Labyrinth as a way to stop Gristlebrand, at least giving you an opportunity to draw the Swords of Plowshares to answer that card. A lot of the 2-mana creatures are all disruptive. None of them are hard locks on their own, but alongside Mana Denial and Karakas, it's a very challenging recipe for Sneak and Show to try to power through.
Yeah, Ross starting off with a Gitaxian Probe there. So you mentioned saw double Rishadan Port, double Revoker, and double Thalia in Todd's hand. That's it could be worse, and that's hard to say. But I mean, you know, there's no Karakas, I suppose. There's no Spirit of the Labyrinth.
A fast Show and Tell can be good out of this hand. If Todd is able to find a copy of Karakas, then it becomes very challenging.
Yeah, well, Ross with a Ponder here. He now knows what he's against. You do see Force of Will, Spell Pierce, Lotus Petal, and a Sneak Attack in his hand. So I don't know if he has the full combo, but this is a reasonable keep on Ross's side.
It is a good keep, although the bad news here is that Revoker is extremely powerful against Sneak Attack, doesn't really do anything against Show and Tell. Or you can name Gristlebrand, I suppose, but you're still at the mercy of them drawing something to answer it or possibly having Emrakul. But Ross appears to be very heavy on sneak attacks in his hand, meaning that Revoker is going to be very disruptive.
Now, is this the kind of thing where Todd is going to name Sneak Attack in the dark off a Revoker?
Well, I can get behind using the first one to name Gristlebrand and the second one to name Sneak Attack, because you don't want Show and Tell putting Gristlebrand into play when you have a Revoker naming Sneak Attack on the battlefield.
Well, post-Ponder, Ross will make a Lotus Petal. Wants to get that in play before Thalia hits the board. And there will be the Thalia from Ross, or rather from Todd. Big respect here. Force of Will pitching Spell Pierce on Ross's side. Now that seems to me, he'd made that play. He knew that Todd had a second Thalia, right?
He's probably planning on following up with another Force of Will on this one.
Gitaxian Probecast saw that Todd drew a third Thalia for the turn. The plan of Force of Willing through all the Thalias, looking like it might cost Ross his whole hand.
Yeah, he would run take-backs if he knew about the third.
Yeah. But he'll get to Preordain and see what he can build to. I mean, if he can Force of Will this turn and next turn and get that Sneak Attack down, it's possible he can Force of Will his way to the combo?
Maybe, but then he's still got to battle through the Revokers. If he was on Show and Tell, I would feel a lot more confident about his chances in this one. But he has to fight over every piece of the puzzle that Anderson has in his hand right now based on the nature of his hand.
Looks like Preordain is going to double top. So whatever Ross found, he likes its chances. You see City of Traders, the draw here.
City of Traders is a huge draw. And, you know, Merriam needs to get to a critical mass of mana,
yeah, so
especially against Rishadan Port.
Yeah, so if he has the creature in play, he could Force of Will this turn, and the next turn Sneak Attack and activate off a land. Maybe he could race through Todd. Todd, third land. Choosing now between his 2/1s. It looks like he'll go for Phyrexian Revoker. This is an important card to see what he names here, too.
Because Merriam has 4 mana in play, it's possible Thalia represents no disruption. Merriam can cast Show and Tell and pay through Thalia. So Revoker is Todd's best chance at defending himself.
Ross will ponder. And Todd actually, in the dark, did name Sneak Attack on this Phyrexian Revoker. So a huge payoff for him here. See there, until that's removed, Ross will not be able to activate Sneak Attack. He has 2 copies of it in his hand, and actually did draw Emrakul that turn.
But no show and tell to pair with.
And Todd will go to work on the life total. Phyrexian Revoker. That'll come across for 2. Ross drops to 13. And now we'll be backed up by Thalia. Todd will make that play. No land, but the disruption is live. The clock is on. And Ross's draw for the turn, an Ancient Tomb. He'll just pass. No reason to play it. It would get rid of his City of Traders at this point. So on Ross's side, a Sneak Attack would let him put Emrakul into play. Does he have anything else to draw to?
Well, it has to be, at this point, it needs to be show and tell because of the Revoker. But he is drawing live to it.
Yeah, so if he hits a show and tell, he can get an Emrakul into play. But yeah, but there's no way to, say, remove a Revoker from the board.
Right.
At least not for game 1. Swing in for 4 here, Ross. Down to 9. You see Todd going to work on Ross's City of Traders with these Rishadan ports.
I think Ross may have to play the Misty Rainforest this turn and give up on the City of Traders, because if he fails to play a land this turn and Todd draws land number 4 to double port, I'm not sure there's a route for Merriam to punch things through in time.
Yeah, things do look tight for him. He's going to go ahead and stand with the cards he has. Todd will swing. Ross is down to 5. The draw for Todd was a Stoneforge Mystic. So he has a choice here. He can speed up the clock by a turn, or he can keep the mana pressure on.
I think he's better off just trying to pin the mana, though it looks like Ross might have just drawn out.
So Ross with show and tell. That's going to be show and tell off Ancient Tomb, 2 mana floating. Had to pay an extra 1 for Thalia.
But if Todd has anything to put in here, I think he might just be able to attack for lethal next turn.
He could attack past, yeah.
Yep.
So show and tell is a play. Ross will put Emrakul into play, but Todd will put Batterskull in. And it looks, though, Ross got his Eldrazi into play, but at 3, he may not get to live till the next turn.
That's a very Death and Taxes win right there with Todd disrupting and holding on just long enough to get lethal across.
Wow, so game 1 goes over to Todd Anderson. Death and Taxes takes the first one. I mean, a resolved show and tell with no Caracas, that's Ross's game plan, but you see even there just falling short.
Yeah, too much pressure, too much damage off the lands, too many wasted turns. Had to use Force of Wills on cards that Todd had redundant copies of. Again, you saw it was, even without Caracas, every little piece of the puzzle was disruption, and with Todd shortening the length of the game with his clock of 4 damage a turn, Ross didn't have quite enough time to get out.
All right, we're going to go ahead and look at the sideboard for these 2 players. We'll start with Ross Merriam on Sneak and Show. He's down a game. He's going to need some help here. We saw game 1, some inability of him to deal with small creatures. Now he's got good options in the board.
2 copies of Defense Grid, 2 Pithy Needles, 2 copies of Omniscience, an Echoing Truth, a Pyroblast, a Rare Elemental Blast, a Sudden Shock, a Wipe Away, a Jace the Mind Sculptor, 2 copies of Pyroclasm, and 2 copies of Beseju. The Pithy Needles in this matchup, all sorts of things with activated powers, including Caracas, and the 2 copies of Pyroclasm are just excellent here. It's possible he'll bring in the Sudden Shock as well. It's just another efficient way to get one of Todd's hate bears off the table.
Now, if he's worried about a card, let's say, like Caracas interfering with his combo, how do you feel about Omniscience in this matchup?
Typically, Omniscience is for mirror match type situations where you don't want to show and tell and then pass the turn back to the opponent. It's possible. It gives him a way to win in some spots with Emrakul that if he's just putting Emrakul into play via show and tell, Caracas makes impossible. I don't know if he has that much room, especially when he's just going to be bringing in some Pithy Needles and some Pyroclasms, just some raw creature removal. I don't know if he has the space to bring in something like Omniscience.
All right, now on Todd Anderson's side, you see Death and Taxes in the sideboard. Always has a slew of hate cards. Now, he's not entirely positioned for the Sneak and Show matchup. He's got a Pithing Needle, a Ratchet Bomb, 3 Aethersworn Canonist, a Wiltleaf Liege, 3 Rest in Peace, 2 Mindbreak Trap, a Cataclysm, 2 Council's Judgment, and a Sunlance. I see a lot of cards here for, say, Storm or Graveyard decks. A lot of Storm hate, to be honest.
He's getting a lot of his work done in game 1, which is why his sideboard's a little light for this matchup, though the Pithing Needle and the 2 copies of Council's Judgment are still fine cards to bring in. They're improvements for the matchup.
All right, so these players getting ready for game 2. We're going to take a second to tell you about the pre-release we have going on here. As you may or may not know, the next set of Magic coming out in January. This is Oath of the Gatewatch. The pre-release here in Roanoke, Virginia at the Star City Games Game Center on January 16th and 17th. We will have that here. We also have an exclusive playmat here. You see Oath of the Gate Hop. You can go ahead and get this one free at the SCG Game Center. So you pre-register today, starcitygames.com/pre-release. All remaining copies will go on sale on the SCG website Monday morning. So while supplies last, you're going to, if you can't make it all the way out to Virginia, you're going to want to get up early and make sure you claim one of these for yourself.
You can see in the background there, the hedron, that's like a carrot, with the rabbit in the front. We are just never going to run out of animal-related jokes for our pre-releases. I was worried.
That maybe we'd use them all.
I was worried we had hit peak animal pun, but that's clearly just not the case.
Hedrons are carrot. Hedron being carrots makes sense, right?
Yeah, totally fine.
Definitely. I like that one. I probably will get that one. I'm gonna camp out for it.
You're gonna do the Minneapolis to Roanoke flight, and
I think maybe that's pretty ambitious for a pre-release. I might have to do the Monday morning sale, but I like the rabbit puns quite a bit. Those are my favorites. I like the Hop and Rabbit Master too.
Yeah, the Hop and Rabbit Master Mat. Unlimited
Easy
design.
to say, yeah.
Unlimited design space. Unlimited design space.
All right, we go to game 2. Ross Merriam will be on the play. I even feel like in game 1 we didn't see all of the really heavy hitters from Todd in the matchup. You know, there was no Caracas, for example.
Neither player came out with their best draw, and Todd was barely able to hold on and win. And that's pretty common. But when Todd ratchets up the disruption, it becomes very, very hard for Ross to win. Caracas backed up by some of those creatures. It's a lot to work through. Post-board, when he has Pyroclasm, and he has some Pithy Needles, it's a little bit different. But game 1, that's a tough mixture.
All right, we'll see if Ross can get the job done here. Game 2, he's on the play. He's going to start off with a Ponder. One thing he can do is with a Fast Start, he can try to sneak under some of Todd's disruption.
No matter how good Todd's draw is, when Ross is on the play, Todd has to cross his fingers. Death and Taxes really doesn't start doing the punishing stuff towards Sneak and Show typically until the second turn, and that can be more than enough time for Ross to get something into play.
We see Todd starting off on a turn 1 Aether Vial. Looking at Ross's side, it looks like he does have Omniscience in. He's going to cast Show and Tell, and you see he reaches right for that Omniscience. He wants insurance against a Caracas that Todd might have. And so it looks like, I think he has Omniscience and Emrakul. So if it wasn't for Omniscience here, the Caracas would get him.
Yep.
Todd will put Phyrexian Revoker in play. Well, that's not going to help at all. Emrakul will be cast off Omniscience. That gives Ross an extra turn. He's also going to cast a Gristlebrand.
Huzzah!
we did it. Ross takes game 2.
And that game right there is, I know the matchup is very good for Death and Taxes, and everyone in the booth picked Todd to win this match, and he's going to be on the play for game 3. But that's why I think the matchup to some extent is a little overstated how good it is for Death and Taxes, because there's just not a whole lot they can do about the best draws.
Well, they still have the issue that Todd is playing a Legacy tournament without Force of Will in his deck. And when you do that, there's just some inherent danger.
Some things can happen to you before you're able to get your various Thalias and Caracas-style cards into play.
You have no Daze, you have no Force of Will, you have no Spell Pierce. You know, your interaction on turn 0 and 1 is pretty limited, if at all.
You saw Todd. I liked what he did with the Show and Tell there. If he puts in Caracas, he's vulnerable to Gristlebrand just gassing cards back up.
Sure.
Or to Omniscience. By putting in Revoker, if Ross's plan is Gristlebrand, at least Todd has an opportunity to untap, draw Swords to Plowshares, and move on with life.
So yeah, how it would work is by the time Ross, if he puts in Revoker and names Gristlebrand, when he sees it, Ross never gets a chance to draw.
Exactly. And if Ross is simply putting in Emrakul, Todd can just untap, put the Caracas into play, and bounce it. So Todd made the right call there with what to put in with the Show and Tell. Just Ross had the nuts, and there's nothing Todd can do about that.
You know, and that's the thing, right? So that game looks easy on Ross's side, but you think about it, if Ross was turn 2 Show and Telling Emrakul into play, Todd had it covered. If you're Show and Telling Gristlebrand into play, good chance Todd has it covered. I mean, Ross really needed to have the turn 2 play. It had to be Omniscience, and then it had to be Omniscience plus Emrakul on top of that. Omniscience plus Gristlebrand may not even have gotten it done.
Right. Todd gets to untap and play Caracas, and depending on what Ross is able to draw off those cards, maybe he isn't able to reassemble in time.
Sure. So we do see, though, Omniscience coming in for Ross. Certainly made that game easy for him. Now that Todd knows that Ross is going to make that play, does it really change anything for him?
Nope. I mean, you know, I think
can't answer that.
Right. He can't beat the best, 5% or 3% of Ross's draws. You know that going in. But with the way that he sideboarded here with the Needle, I would imagine, and the 2 copies of Council's Judgment, he has more game against, the upper band of Ross's draws that aren't the absolute best.
Some good history between these 2 players on the Open Series. They actually had a chance to battle last weekend at the Invitational in Standard. Ross Merriam got the better of that match. Lifetime, he has 3 of their 5 meetings. This is the 5th time they've met in Legacy. They're currently at 2-2 apiece.
And that hand that you saw Ross have that game, he can do that on the first turn. And there's just nothing Todd can really do about it.
Sure.
The best draws are still the best draws.
On the play, Todd really puts pressure on Ross to do it on turn 1 because he could have a Thalia.
Right.
But on the draw, that seems I mean, Todd had a turn 1 Aether Vial. It looked like with a lot of good options. See Todd's keep here. He's on the play. He'll keep 7. Ross down to 6. Looks like we have a mixture of Pithing Needle and Thalia plus lands from Todd.
Yeah, it looks like Disruption that can't necessarily beat the most overpowering draws. Not the best possible 7-card hand, and I believe he does not have Caracas, but still an acceptable 7 on the play.
So in this kind of matchup, if Todd is needling things in the dark, his options, he can needle Gristlebrands, he can needle sneak attacks, and lands, and that's about it.
Right. Fetch lands.
Different ways to attack the deck. Last time we saw Todd in the dark Revoker a sneak attack game 1, which was just all sorts of punishing. It won him the game.
It's a little bit different post-board because Ross has access to the Pyroclasms and the Sudden Shock, so Revoker's not just a lot to stay in play for the whole game.
See the other match we have, other destination match between Jim Davis and Danny Jessup. Time permitting, we will go ahead and get to that. Nick Miller currently covering it over in the sideboard. As Todd and Ross, in a quick 16 minutes, head to Game 3. And it looks like we are underway. Todd with the turn 1 Mother of Runes. Now, Mother of Rune's a card I wouldn't normally expect in the matchup, but you mentioned Ross is a good bet to bring in Pyroclasms.
He's a good bet to bring in Pyroclasms, and Todd does not have a lot of cards to sideboard in the matchup, as we discussed, and he has Umezawa's Jitte and Batterskull at the minimum that need to be coming out of the deck, so Mother of Runes is better than the equipment, certainly, and again, Anderson's just not sideboarding that heavy.
Sure. Go over to Ross's side. Looks like with Todd's follow-up, Stoneforge Mystic, Thalia. You said may not have a Caracas. For Ross, he does have a copy of Sneak Attack in hand and a fair number of cantrips. So he'll have some time to set this up. It'll be a ponder. Looks like he still needs a creature to put into play. Go ahead and shuffle off the ponder. Nothing he likes there. We'll have more cantrips on the next turn. I believe at least Brainstorm in Ross's hand. But there's a good chance he'll be paying through Thalia for them.
Exactly. When Ross is, especially when Ross is on the draw, these sort of creatures can be compounding problems because you can't cast a cantrip next turn. Then maybe you're getting ported or wastelanded. You're getting clocked the whole time.
Sure. Thalia from Todd. And he will go ahead and attack with Mother of Runes.
I do not believe it is possible for Ross to cast a Pyroclasm this turn through the Thalia. There's no copy of Simian Spirit Guide in the deck.
Right, Lotus Petal wouldn't work because he'd have to pay for it?
Yeah, I don't think there's a way for him to jump up.
That's why Todd gets the safe point of damage while he can.
No, I'm sorry, excuse me, that's not true. He could play a 2-mana land, play a Petal, have a mana floating.
Okay.
But that requires a ton of resources,
a
lot of things. And Todd doesn't want to wait all day, especially when he doesn't have Caracas in hand, so he's got to get a move on here.
Well, for Ross, it's going to be a ponder. He's going to have to pay 2 for it. You see him searching up a basic mountain there. Some wasteland insurance on Ross's side. And for the second time this game, Ross is going to shuffle off the Ponders. A powerful mode on the card, to be sure, but it's not what you want to be doing with it.
It's better than the alternative. But you would be hoping for a little bit more information and to have a better set of draw steps rolled up.
And for the second time, he ponders into a Brainstorm. So Ross right now with a triple Brainstorm hand facing down Thalia, and I don't know if he has another land. Things are not lining up, I think, the way he would like them to.
And a big draw step here from Anderson finding a copy of Rashad and Port. I'm not sure if he's going to want to play that in lieu of some of the other options. Maybe he'd rather get some more pressure on the battlefield. But the Thalia plus Rashad and Port combo against Ross opening up slow on a bunch of cantrips, it's problematic. Yeah. You start getting the squeeze in a little bit.
Yeah, so he may spend another turn getting additional power before he on the board before he goes for that lock play.
Right. Maybe. It's very close.
Thalia will swing in. That'll drop Merriam down to 15. As we go back to Todd, both Stoneforge Mystic, Flicker Wisp, Pithing Needle, and Phyrexian Revoker all in his hand. And it looks like he'll go Port into Stoneforge Mystic. So we'll see what equipment he still has in the deck. Main deck, we have an Umezawa's Jite, a Batterskull, and a Sword of Fire and Ice.
Sword of Fire and Ice is the best clock here, and it gives Anderson an opportunity to find more disruption. So that seems like an easy choice.
So you go back Ross's way. He finds a copy of Emrakul for the turn. So now he has both Sneak Attack and Emrakul in hand, but he is well short on lands.
And the problem is that, if Ross gets Brainstorm locked here, it's probably over. And if Ross simply spends his turn brainstorming, Todd can probably sense that means his hand is mana light and can start just being very aggressive using Rashad and Port rather than develop his board.
And that just might happen. We'll go to Ross. It's going to be a 2-mana Brainstorm. This is main phase. He hits a Pyroclasm, a Fetch Land, and a Gristlebrand. So he finds his land. And maybe the Clasm he needs.
The problem is that he can't follow up with a play this turn because even if he makes his land drop, Thalia still pins all of his action. And next turn, Todd's going to be able to untap, potentially port him, still have Mother Runes to protect something, be able to Stoneforge the sword into play. That will give something protection from red. So finding the third land and finding is definitely a prize. And it's possible the Pyroclasm will come up as well, but there's no guarantee that Pyroclasm really disrupts Todd at all.
Yeah, the mana constraining here from Todd is no joke. And he'll play a Tarn and pass. So at that point, Ross is on the line where he has to start using Pithing Needle to maybe preemptively answer a Mother of Runes or a Sword of Fire Ice or something like that.
Right.
Well, we'll see if he can put it together before his life total gets too low. Ross still at a healthy 15, but facing down 3 creatures on Todd's side. And Thalia will bring in, just by itself, Ross down to 13. Over on our backup match, we have Jim Davis versus Danny Jessup, with Jim Davis up a game right now. Playing Sultai Delver against Jessup's Temur Delver. One thing of note, the Delver deck's popular, 6 players playing it, they did not perform well at all, actually, during the Legacy portion of this tournament.
Yeah, a bit surprising, but Jacob Wilson, at least, was able to get the mirror match against Hunter Nance last round, so he will be playing for buys shortly. But not a great performance from the Delver decks. Storm, Miracles, Death, and Taxes, those were the decks of the tournament thus far.
As we go back to Ross, still hunting for lands. It looks like Todd is going to put Sword of Fire Ice into play and port Ross here. So the timing on Sword of Fire Ice is pretty interesting here. Why he's doing it during Ross's upkeep?
Sudden shock.
Okay. And that is in Ross's sideboard.
Yep. Good heads-up play there by Todd. As someone who has bamboozled several Stoneforge Mystics with Sudden Shock over the years. Yep, you just kind of want to do it straight away.
Brainstorm from Ross. finds Lotus Petal, Sneak Attack, Omniscience. You talked about the dangers of getting Brainstorm locked, and it looks like Ross may have encountered just that.
And now getting the Lotus Petal into play, that's a mana, so you really don't start getting any value out of it until the following turn. The noose is starting to tighten a little bit. It's not one individual card, just like we saw in the first game, but the mana denial, the pressure, and now a Sword of Fire and Ice to really escalate things.
Yeah, you really are feeling this Thalia. It's when you're looking at Ross's hand. The fact that all these Brainstorms cost, I believe he paid 2 Brainstorms at attacks. He paid a Ponder for attacks. This Thalia has eaten, it seems like every turn from Ross.
Although it looks like Ross has picked up a Misty Rainforest. I do not know if he is locked this turn. We'll find out momentarily.
So the draw for the turn was a land, but not the Brainstorm draws.
If I'm saying things correctly, don't want to promise anything here, but he may have picked up land number 4.
I think you're right. We do have a Misty Rainforest.
This is the 4th turn of the game, I believe, now for Ross. This may be his first turn of the game of casting 2 spells in a turn. That's what the mana denial has done to him so far.
And this would let him get Lotus Petal into play if he wanted to.
And I think that he needs to be very efficient with his mana. You know, sometimes you want to sit back on the pedal to bluff. You know, maybe I can't do X, Y, and Z next turn, but Merriam's so tight on mana that I feel like he's going to play this pedal with the leftover island he has.
Seems like a good bet. Yeah, Ross will do just that. Lotus Petal into play. He'll pass. You see he's kept Omniscience, Sneak Attack, Pyroclasm, and I believe Emrakul in his hand. But no, so he's got lines to play here. But his life total is dwindling quickly.
You know, Todd's got him beat now here. Looks like 2 turns if he equips the sword this turn. It means that Show and Tell and Gristlebrand doesn't do anything because Ross will not have the life to pay, and Todd can simply untap, give a creature a protection from black, and attack for lethal.
Right, Mother of Runes can push through whichever creature's wearing the sword. See, Todd also has a Pithing Needle of his own in hand. And it'll be Phyrexian Revoker from Todd. And it's going to name Lotus Petal. The mana denial continues.
And now I believe this sets up Todd to have a 2-turn clock, even if he doesn't equip the sword this turn. So,
all right, so walk me through it.
Tax Merriam down to 8. The sword is essentially 4 points of damage, and there's more than 4 points of power in play, even if Mother Rune stays untapped.
All right. Think that's where he's going as well. A swing from Thalia and Stoneforge Mystic puts Ross down to 8. Now he'll untap. Ross knows about the sword. On board, it looks like he has 1 turn to live. The mountain is ported during upkeep.
Well, Merriam picked up City of Traders. I have to imagine if he's got any draw step, that was it, because mana's the issue. I suppose with the mountain being ported, it's possible he cannot sneak attack and activate this turn. He needs to be able to do everything in one shot.
Yeah, he only has single red. So Pithing Needle will be his play. Having to pay 2 mana for that yet again. And he may have to do this instead of sneak attacking. But he names Sword of Fire Ice.
Gives him 1 more turn.
And what a cost he had to pay for it. Because of that Thalia, he's unable to play any of his other spells. Doesn't play City of Traders for the turn either. I suppose there is a Wasteland on the board.
Oh. And I believe this is Todd going for the kill.
All right, Flicker Wisp is the play from Todd. It will remove Pithing Needle. Now the sword can play 2 mana to equip. It'll be the sword onto Stoneforge Mystic. Here's a swing for 2, 4, 7. If they connects, the trigger will be 8 and 9. Ross is at 8. And there you have it. Todd Anderson, Death and Taxes, defeats Ross Merriam 2-1.
And you saw Todd there without Caracas in the games that he won. Hold on by just a thread, and it was all mana denial, a little bit of pressure. It wasn't one individual card. He did not lock Ross out of the game with a single thing.